And these two guys, JB and Opal Lee, was drinking, not drunk, and they had a book on the principles of flight, telling you how an airplane will lift itself if you give it power. The tail, how there's drag on the tail, and how the ailerons and the rudders worked on it, the stabilizer, how it would steer. And JB said, I've got it. Said, I've read that book. I know how to fly. I said, I've been in an airplane before anyway. And Calcutta Indian said, I know how to fly. So they put the wings on. They had already cranked the engine a few days prior to that, and it was running pretty smooth, I think. They got in the plane, they taxied out into Highway 35, and they took off straight west up Highway 35 toward McGee into the sun, and you could barely see them. But they did make a circle, come back low over town, and Opal Lee's daddy, Mr. Louis Posey, was down at the pool hall. That's where everybody was. It had domino tables in it and 3 pool tables, and you just automatically went in there like it was a magnet. That's where you met up with everybody. After we were 10 or 12 years old, they let us stay in there. They would run you out when you were a little bit younger than that. That's where we stayed in high school most of the time, was in the pool hall. So Mr. Posey hollered up to his son, Opal Lee, and said, son, you way too high. It's too dangerous up there. Get down lower. And he already wasn't but about 200 feet high. And I don't know whether he could hear him or not, but they went back toward the west into the sun and disappeared for a long time. It was probably 15, 20 minutes, but it seemed to me like it was 2 or 3 days they were gone. A car skidded up to the red light and said there's an airplane crashed up yonder at that big white house in the curve. That was Mr. Robert Bryant's house in that curve, and we loved Robert Bryant. He treated us young people real good. He told us a story. He said, I saw a wild turkey leave going over there toward the fire tower 50 years ago, and said, I looked up the other day and there was one coming back. He said, I wonder if it was that same turkey. But he took a lot of time with us. So the town had kind of a boy that wasn't quite right in the head, and they would allow him to be a policeman, but he wore a cow pistol, and he's sitting up there at the red light, guarding the red light with that cow pistol. This car skidded up and told him that the plane had crashed, thought he was a real policeman. He answered them by touching his nose with his tongue, and they took off. We never saw them again. But all of us got a ride. I know I was riding with my brother. Bill was there, and then Bill and my cousin Harry Allen showed up, but he was just a little bitty boy. He was 3 or 4 years old, I think. They were stuck up in a big giant oak tree. The plane had come in, overshot the grass pasture out there. They gave it full power, I think. It was a hot day, a very humid day, and an airplane can't bite into the wind very well without it being dry air, so it just fluttered over there and stuck up in that tree. It didn't even hurt the plane, much less the passengers. This 8A Luscombe is a tandem. It has a front seat and a rear seat, and it also has a door that opens down instead of out. So by this time, a big crowd had gathered, and Mr. Louis Posey was there to see about his son, and he said, son, don't try to climb down out of that airplane. Said, I'm going downtown to bar 2 plow lines and tie them together, and we're going to let you down with a rope. There wasn't even any lasso ropes in the early 50s. If someone had a lasso rope, you went and borrowed it. You didn't go buy one or anything like that. And in those days, a lasso rope was 35 feet. And I remember my dad getting one, and we talked about that lasso rope probably for a week. So Mr. Posey felt like he could tie 2 plow lines, which was about 12 feet long, together and maybe let him down. But Opal Lee didn't listen. He unlatched the door. It flopped down, and then he undone his seat belt, and he tumbled out and hit a big old limb and broke his arm. Then he hit the ground, and it knocked the breath out of him, and Harry walked up to him and kicked him and said, he's dead. But in a minute, Opal Lee got to kicking around and found out he was alive. They threw him in an old 46 Ford car that was very tall. It was like some of the vehicles today. It was very top heavy. The shocks were wore out on it. You never replaced parts right after World War II. I imagine most of you know it, but they didn't even build cars from 1941 to 1946, so you just patched on them or let them run the way they were. They threw him in that 46 Ford car. They made such a tight turn to go toward the hospital in McGehee that it almost turned over. It just rocked over. The shocks wore out, and then it rocked back straight. So they took off to McGehee. They brought him back a little while later, and they were complaining because the hospital emergency room had charged $15 to mend his arm and for the use of the emergency room. But he was back there and doing pretty good. But to this day, I can't remember how JB got down out of the airplane. And I don't know what happened to the airplane. But it was a silver 8A Luscombe. But Harry told me before he died he was sure that plane was yellow. But it being 55, 60 years, I guess either one of us could be mistaken, you know.